I was wondering if you could tell me where your family is originally from.
My grandparents are originally from Cilician Armenia. Most three-quarters are from Adana and one-quarter from Harpet. My mom's father's side is from Harpet, comes from Varoujan family, and my grandmother comes from Sarkisian family. That's from my mom's side. My father's side, both of them are from Adana. Grandpa, of course, is their Simonian, and grandmother was Varoujan.
Thank you. I was wondering if you knew anything about your grandparents' lives in Armenia.
Some, as much as the only person that I was associated with was my grandmother from my mom's side, because the other three were already gone. Uh, she was the one who mainly informed me about the genocide that she experienced. If I may, if I like say something about that, I'd be
Yes,
happy to.
please.
She was born, of course, late 19th century, and she was a teenager in 1909 when the Adana massacre took place.
Oh,
And I remember her explaining or telling me the stories about the Adana massacre. And she remembers how the people were lined up in front of the river and they were being shot and thrown into the river. She was a third in line before her turn came to be assassinated or killed when the order came to stop the massacres. She tells me that when they went back to the Armenian quarter, everything was demolished, completely destroyed. So her father, my grandfather, took them to the vineyards where they had, and that's where they stayed throughout the summer. As you know, Adana massacre took place in April. So throughout the summer, fall, my grandfather rebuilt his home and then re-brought them back to their home in Adana, that is.
wow. Do you know when your grandparents on your mom's side left Armenia?
Well, they were, of course, part of the genocide. My grandmother's side, which I know, she had five sisters. Two of them died in genocide. One of them, I remember from my uncle telling me that she, with her four children, threw herself into the river to avoid being captured by the Turkish soldiers.
Wow.
Whereas the other three sisters, one ended up being in Baghdad, the other one in Jerusalem, and my grandmother from Adana came to Damascus and then Lebanon. It was about 35 years later when the three sisters had a reunion in Jerusalem.
Wow.
1948.
That's great. And on your father's side, do you know anything
On
about
my
that?
father's side, unfortunately, I have not associated with them. I do know that my grandfather was a baker. He was a baker. Well, my mom's grandfather was. He had a winery, or actually Rachi, as you know, Ori, and of course he was a singer. So he had quite a well circle of friends in Armenian and non-Armenian circles. Wow. So when the 1915 genocide took place, Heraclius himself was not deported, and my grandma they stayed, but all the rest of the family were deported. Most of them were, of course, perished in desert. Yet my grandpa and grandmother stayed in Adana in 1921 when the ethnic cleansing of Cilicia took place. That's where they were ported, went to Egypt and to Lebanon.
They went to Egypt and then to
Well, yeah,
Lebanon,
that was
you
the
said?
port, right?
The
Port
port.
Said, and then came back to Lebanon and Syria. Yeah,
Wow. And what year was that?
1921.
Mm-hmm.
And my younger uncle was born on the boat.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
My older
very
uncle
cool.
was born 1914 in Adana. My mom, of course, was born way later on, 1931.
Okay. Wow.
That's the Armenia side, directly, let's say, from home country. Then, of course, we grew up in Lebanon. My father became a tailor. My mother was also a seamstress herself. She helped my dad. Um, and we went to school. School years, of course, I had two brothers, one older, one younger. I had an older sister. She died very young age because of unexpected illness. My older brother went to seminary, yet did not become priest, chose not to. Was not his calling. Myself, first years we went to Ahpalian Elementary School in Shtora, Lebanon. That's in Bekaa Valley. was born in a village. I was a village boy.
Uh-huh.
So grew up in the countryside and went to school there, local Armenian school. My mom was one of the principal board members, let's say, on the school. She was one of the movers to make sure that there was an Armenian school in Lebanon, in Shtora.
Mm-hmm.
And later on, after the sixth grade, we attended Armenian Evangelical School in Anjar, Lebanon, which was only about 13 kilometers from Shtora. I graduated high school in Anjar. Then 1 year, because that was the middle of the civil war in Lebanon, a lot of refugees moved on from Beirut to Anjar for safety, and that we, myself and my friend who were graduating not to go to college, we couldn't go, and the principal called us in and said, "Hey, we need your help." So both of us end up becoming teachers for
Straight
1 year,
out of high school?
straight out of high school.
Oh my goodness.
Well, my friend was very good in science, and I was very well in languages. So first to fourth graders, I taught languages, Arabic, Armenian,
Uh-huh.
and my friend was in science and chemistry, so forth.
Wow.
And later on, in '79, I ended up coming to Fresno.
Okay, great. Thank you for that.
Sure. You want more about the
Yeah,
village I was growing up?
I'll
Yeah.
ask first, and you may
Yes.
just not know this, but if you have any stories or knowledge about what immigrating from Armenia, and you said that people went to different places, Egypt, other locations before coming to Lebanon,
Correct.
but how difficult that process was.
To what I know, my grandfather had funds, his own money. So when they came, a lot of people at the time end up being in the refugee camps because they had nothing. Uh, my grandfather apparently did have money, so he did rent an apartment or house. That's where my families lived.
Mm-hmm.
Never lived in, but that's my mom's side.
Mm-hmm.
My father's side, I do know that my grandfather and family lived in the camp, which is a refugee camp again, until they moved on. He learned to become a tailor, and then, of course, making money, and then moved on to houses. We had our own home in Lebanon. It's with the countryside, as I said, gardens and vegetables and fruit trees, as you see in Fresno, very much like that's what I grew. It was hard for me when I came here to Fresno to buy fruits from the stores because I knew the fruit you pick up from the tree and eat it. You don't pay for it. So for about 6 months a year, I don't remember buying fruit in Fresno. But we grew up in the countryside. We had uh, clubs, Armenian club. We attended there on Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays. We play basketball, ping pong, soccer, chess. Those are our passing times, and when we were growing up as a teenagers, uh, I had lots of friends from those days. A lot of boys, a lot of girls. Now, almost all of them are either in Canada or United States.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Could you tell me more about what the Armenian club meant to you and what that community is?
That I would say played one of the impact that had in my life was the youth group that I attended. We used to have a weekly education session where we learned about the history of the Armenians. This is outside of high school, or an elementary school, outside of home. We also had the club where we had the teaching of the Armenian life, or Armenian literature, or Armenian traditions. There was a church, of course. We attended the church. In the church, as you know, the Armenian Apostolic Church is very much traditional. So we did basically follow all the traditions of Armenian church.
And what was your experience like with the Armenian church in Lebanon?
Personally, I would say I was very much involved. As a child, I remember my mother taking us to the church on Sunday morning. And in the afternoon at 1:30, she used to collect every single child in town and hold the Sunday school classes. She was a Sunday school teacher, so you can see that she herself grew up in Armenian church. As a 13-year-old child, she was a choir member, so she made sure that all her sons are also in the choir. Obviously, I was singing in the choir then too. Yeah.
Wow. And was that also a big source of community?
Well, a lot of, well, I can't say bookstores of community, but it was very much impacted my life.
Mhm.
The faith, number one, and then the history and the culture. Those are things I learned at home from my mothers and my uncles. Was it had a very much impact on myself.
Mhm.
My upbringing or thoughts that I think right now came on, I would say, indirectly from my childhood.
That's great. And you mentioned that you were able to learn a lot of subjects through the Armenian Club about Armenian history and life. I was wondering what your other education experience was like in Lebanon.
Well, in high school, of course, it was Armenian, being Armenian school, we
Mm.
learned Arabic, the native language, Armenian, and English. Those are the three languages that we learned. In high school, my passion was toward literature, so I was very much involved in poetry, recitling poems, and so forth.
Wow.
And we had clubs in just like in states here. There were different clubs: a science club, a literature club, a Bible club, or history club. So students had the choice within the school to be part of the specific club of their
That's
choice.
great. Can you describe what your neighborhood was like growing up?
Interesting you asked that. About a year or so ago, a childhood friend of mine and myself we started chatting on Facebook
Oh.
messengers, and we started remembering the names and nicknames that we used to call people in our town. There were at least 30, 40 names, were not the regular name, just,
Uh-huh.
plumber or writer or something else or nurse. I mean, but funny names.
Uh-huh.
So the town itself was very vibrant, especially summertime. Wintertime, being in a countryside and cold or snow, you didn't have too many people. But summertime, you had quite a lot of people moving from Beirut to the town Shtora, which was a summer vacation place for them. And that
Oh.
was a very vibrant city or town, I would say. It was in the middle between, let's say, Beirut and Damascus. So you
Uh-huh.
had quite a lot of travelers passing by. And the town was very well known by their matzun. You know what matzun is?
No, I'm
Matzun
not
is the
sure.
yogurt.
Oh,
Yes,
wow.
and it was very, very famous.
Uh-huh.
And people used to stop by and eat that. And you have this lavash bread and spread the matzun in there or tan in the
Yeah.
thing, put the dried mint on it and lemon and olive oil, wrap it up, long one, and you just start eating from both sides. That was one of the fun things. And we used to, as youth groups, let's say, we used to go out and have our good time in those some of the restaurants with no fear of our neighbors being any had animosity toward us. We
Wow.
lived among Arabs, both Christian and non-Christian Islams, and we've had very comfortable life through 1990, 1975 until the Civil War started breaking out.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So you would say that most of the Armenians who were in Lebanon were living in the same kind of areas in these neighborhoods?
Well, spread out in throughout Lebanon, mainly north or central and north part of and Bekaa Valley, you have a
Uh-huh.
lot of Armenians. And in where we were living, because it was mixed ethnic makeups, you had the Christians, Muslim, Greeks, and both Islam, Shia, and Sunni, Druze, and Mausa. We just lived together. I remember right behind our club, there was a Muslim boy who grew up with us, and he was as fluent as any Armenian you can imagine because he grew up with us. He spoke the Armenian language very
Wow.
fluently. And we didn't put any difference between us and the non Armenians.
Uh-huh.
Yes, you always knew they were non Armenians, but we played together.
Oh, wow.
Our neighbors in home, we had two Armenian neighbors across from our street, and Christian and a Muslim all living together. So,
So how would you describe how you viewed your Armenian identity while you were living in Lebanon?
when you are a teenager, it's hard for you to define
Oh.
identity, but you grow up in the culture and the traditions that your fathers or grandparents grew up with, or the entire neighborhood, entire town was practicing. It was nothing special about it per se, but they were going on their regular daily habits, which was your regular traditions or identity. These were very simple things at that time, but now that you look at it, that made us who we are today.
Mm.
Just, I mean, attending the church, we were evangelical church. We had Armenian evangelicals there, not as much Catholic, but apostolic, and we were all friends. And as I mentioned earlier, my mom, she collected us 13 to 20 kids, all from the village. They attend evangelical, non-evangelical church. So they're all together, and she was very strict.
It's very beautiful, though.
Yeah, yeah, it was. It was. It was fun. I mean, one thing I remember in town, which Fresno doesn't have it, is the four seasons.
Oh,
Specifically, you can tell it was spring, summer, fall, or
yeah.
winter. That has its beauty that I miss.
Oh, that's very beautiful. I was wondering if you, I know you were a teenager at this point, but observed anything about the political climate in Lebanon.
Sure, sure. Yes, of course, the political climate uh, grew up being more tense as I was getting older. Maybe I started realizing more. And yes, most of us in Lebanon, you had no choice but to follow what was going on. Obviously, you can see Lebanon became the battleground for the neighboring countries. When I say neighboring countries, from Libya, Egypt, Israel, Jordan, Syria, uh, all those countries, or Turkey, or Iran, they all had their small share in Lebanon. If you expand that, goes to the United States and goes to Russia, or friends, they all had their quote unquote representatives, may say, who represented their interest in there. So that gradually became more tense. As a child, you don't realize it, but definitely Lebanon did become a battleground. When the Palestinians moved from Jordan, 1970s, to Lebanon, that was a tense moment because Jordanians did not want to see Palestine within their territory. There was an agreement in Egypt to move everybody to South Lebanon. And Lebanon said that they're Palestinian, they should go to Palestine, not to Lebanon. But of course, they moved in there, and that created part of the civil war. And then the Syrians, of course, participated. Those were all witnesses. I've seen when the Syrian army marched from Syria to Lebanon. I was in school, and I saw the tanks and so forth. And I've seen also dogfight on top of our high school between Syrian and the Israeli planes. Those are things that you know. The more I think they come live, I've seen that. And going from, let's say, from our time to Anjar in the high school years, when this is middle of civil war, we're talking 13 kilometers. We're talking mainly about 7-8 miles. The binoculars, you can see it. Actually, I've seen the fire right by our home. You did not know from the distance, is it your home or the neighbor's home? And later on, when you drive there, you see that was one of the Christian homes that was being burned. But of course, things got tense and more tense over the years.
What were the first signs of conflict that you witnessed?
Well, 1973, April 13, 1973 to be exact, when a bus was ambushed. And that was the start of it. Calmed down a little bit for 2 years, then 75 blew up again. There was no end afterwards. It was very tense. In our area, even though, let's say, there was mixed religious communities, in 75, 76, most of the Armenians left, most of the Christians left. My parents stayed. We had Islamic neighbors. She was from Brazil background, Brazilian, but Arab Islam. She stayed there. She was a very good friend of my mom. She technically was a guardian of my family. But I do know even at nighttime, even though you're inside the house, people will watch you, will walk around the house. At night, you see footsteps looking from the window. I remember one of them, just to see what the reaction would be if they entered. It wasn't up to your face, but it was quietly there watching to see if you are going to challenge anybody or not, which we did not. We didn't have any guns, by the way. In the Civil War, we didn't have any guns.
You mentioned that a lot of Armenians left.
They left because most of the Christians left, so they felt the same tense moment, and they moved on to Beirut, which were more heavier, or let's say larger Christian community.
Oh, I see.
That's when they left. And afterwards,
Oh, No, finish what you were
No,
saying.
some went to from there on to Australia, others came to Canada or United States.
Hmm. Would you say that your relationship with Armenians or non-Armenians changed during this time?
Well, with the non-Armenian community, because in high school years, I used to work in a photography shop as a photographer,
Oh,
and my dealing was with a lot of non-Armenians,
uh-huh.
particularly Islams. And I used to go take pictures of their weddings, pre-wedding arrangements they had, special arrangement they have, prenuptial agreements Islam's practice. I used to go take pictures of that. In a Christian community, I used to take pictures of baptism, weddings also. So to me, it was more like my life as a teenager was growing up. I didn't feel any threat from anyone.
Mm-hmm.
So my relationship with the non-Armenian community was very much on a friendly basis. In the Armenian community, most of the Armenians were in Anjar, which is about 13 kilometers away, which where I went to high school. There were my high school friends. As up to now, I'm still friends with them. When we see each other, you remember the good old days and smile, have fun.
Oh, very nice.
But as far as a clash, no. Personally, our family did not have that. That's the only reason we were able to survive, stay there.
Mm. And can you describe a bit of what your day-to-day life looked like in the midst of contact, all of
Sure.
this conflict?
Yes. Monday through Friday, we're in school. Saturday and Sundays, weekdays, I used to go work at the photography shop, photo shop, called this Photozare.
Uh-huh.
And on summertime, my all days were there, 3 months or so. At nighttime, till 10, 11 o'clock at night, I was out taking pictures.
Mm-hmm.
And the community loved photos. So my camera was used to get, let's say, one or two 35-minute films. I will just take maybe 4 or 5 of them. So you can imagine the amount of film I'm using it, but they used to come and buy it, which was very helpful for the business. Yeah, and again, there was no tenseness. The gradually grow up, yes, gradually feel that because you see less of your faith moving out. You have a lesser support base, let's say, from your own tradition. So the tension grows up. On my dad's side, I remember several times, man used to walk from work to his shop. Several times you have kids will throw stone on him or say nasty words to see reaction. My father's calm personality was just left him just walk quietly, not to be intimidated by any kind of a threat. You've seen on the stores, they put dirt in front of the door, expecting some reaction. Those were the one and toward the end, 1978, 79, 80s, not in the beginning. That's again after the tense civil war started and after you had non-Lebanese moving to Lebanon.
Okay. And you mentioned a few of the aspects of the conflict that you were able to witness. Do you have any other such stories?
Let me remember. Not myself directly, but I have seen or neighbors who have been wounded or faced some kind of battles, yes, but not directly. Let me see if there's anything comes to my mind. Not directly myself, but friends, yes. Relatives, yes. Being threatened, being kidnapped by other people, yes, I've had that. Later on, when I came here, I heard two of my childhood friends were killed by rocket that attacked from sky. They were attacking supposedly some locations, but my friends just been working over there and end up being under the rebels, under the ruins. I mean, they were about 20, 22 when they died. Another one died, again, rocket being thrown from one side to the other, arm chopped, and then eventually died. My father got wounded heavily in 1977. He was working as a tailor, and the rocket, 155 millimeter rocket, just came right to the room that he was working. He was hospitalized for 1 week. His ankle was gone. We didn't hear from him for a week. Then my mom and my younger brother went there and saw him in the hospital. Eventually, he came home, and that was a he could have been dead. You know, in a shredded rocket, just hit him himself. Otherwise, any place else he would be gone. That was in '77. Beirut. It was working in Beirut because there was no work in Lebanon, so he had to go there work, and so faced that. Then he moved on to Shtora, where we were, until they moved to the United States.
Wow, thank you for that.
Sure.
I am curious at what point in the conflict you left for the United States.
It was in 1979. 78, again, when we finished high school, we were just we're planning to university.
Yeah.
American University of Beirut or Haikazian College. Those were the two main high school universities that the Armenians attended. So we applied, and the war broke down. We couldn't go. So for 1 year, we ended up being a teacher there, as I said. During those times, you're going to plan where to. You know, you have to go to college. So that was the time when my brother was in Fresno, my older brother. So he says, "Why don't you come to Fresno?" So I applied to university here as a student, and that's how, fall of '79, I moved to Fresno.
Wow.
If you like, one memories I would say from Lebanon that I would like to share. It was in the end of the high school year. We used to have a poetry recitation among the Lebanese high schools, and every high school would represent two. So there were 31 high schools, Armenian high schools I'm talking about, and each one had two students. And that's in the middle of the Civil War, and I want to participate. So, but being in the valley, it's difficult to go through Lebanon in the middle of the war. I went to the principal. I said, "I'd like to participate." He says, "You know, you got the people in Beirut or other places, bigger high school, they're going to win. You have no chance." I said, "Okay, let me try it." So he wrote a short note. He represents Armenian Evangelical School. I took that. Our neighbor was going there, so I went there. Walked in there. On the agenda, there is no name. Everybody else's name, 30 names, except my, because I was walking. Yes, you can say that. I handed the paper to the organizer. I said, "I represent this high school, and I like to participate." Of course, there's a one mandatory poem you have to recite, and then one selected. So everybody ended up, it was a large auditorium, you know, remember 30 high schools, how many students, parents piking up. So I was the last one to get up. I end up saying the mandatory one, and then at the end, the last one. And I won the first place.
Wow, that's a great story.
Yeah, and I came back. I didn't say anything to anybody. And about a week later, my principal, my principal, "Come on over here." I go, "What happened?" I said, "I won." I go, "What?" He's like, he was surprised. That it was kind of nice. Something that I got a bunch of books as a gift. Literary book, of course, I still have it in personal. It's a memory of, yeah. That's one thing I cannot share once in a while, whenever I remember.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
I was also curious, where did you come to study in the U.S.?
Fresno State.
Okay.
Came to Fresno State, and my intent was to learn either economy, business. That was my major, was hoping. And I attended, received a bachelor's degree in business administration. Later on, I thought to go either law school or international affairs because my passion is more international affairs and politics. So I went to law school one day and I said, "No, I don't want to do that." So I ended up following the master's program at Fresno State. That was just about the time when Soviet Union was breaking down. In 1992, when I finished the master's program, yet I had to write my thesis, and I ended up being involved in humanitarian development project in Armenia. For the next 2 years, which you have a deadline to submit your master's program, I didn't have a time because I used to work almost 20 hours a day because Armenia being 12 hours difference between us. So I worked from home. That's we're talking 92, 94, uh, and fly to Army often
Wow.
to oversee the project. And then last semester, my principal says, if you don't finish your master's thesis now, I'm going to force you to take all the classes all over again.
Oh.
That's 2 years, you know that, right? I said, whoops. And on the phone with my chairman, I'm talking, my voice is down. This chairman living in by Lafayette in the San Francisco area. He goes, what's wrong with your voice? I go, nothing. Come on, tell me. He's a man, he's a doctor. He knows my voice for the last 2 years. I said, this is the situation. He got so mad at me. He says, right now, you transfer every single phone to me. You go finish your master's thesis. So I went to the chair. I said, okay, again. He says, all right, you have only 2 weeks left. And there's no way you can finish thesis, right? He says, you got 5 principal subjects. Each one of us is going to give a question to you.
Oh.
You can write 30 pages each, answering the questions.
Each question.
So I did. This was after the semester was over, during the winter break, before the spring season starts. If I don't submit it by January the 6th, I'm done. I have to go all over again. So I submitted 5. One of them called me back. He says, you're never going to forget me. I go, why? He says, you pass all the 4 of them except here because the information you provided, we're talking international affairs, it's not current. You need to update it. It was about South America, about Uruguay. So I went back, rewrite the paper, and passed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh my
It was a
goodness, a big challenge.
It was. Yeah. It was good.
That's great. Going back to, I guess, your experience in college, that was your first time in the United States?
Oh, yes, I came directly for college.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm jumping the topic too
No,
much.
no, it's
You
great.
can cut and edit, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I came to college and I attended college. That was, yes, first experience because I was in high school. My English was basic, not a lot, but of course, we did learn English in Lebanon. We learned English literature, but I wasn't as smooth or as fluent. Yes, I attended the university here. First, I went to City College, by the way, 2 years. And then I was working daytime because as a student, as you know, you have to make the end meets. I was mainly nighttime. I worked daytime, I mean, at nighttime every night. I went to college.
Yeah. And I was wondering if there was any pressure to assimilate within Fresno, or if you felt like you were able to preserve Armenian culture.
At college, one of the classes I took was assimilation with the local culture, at least familiarize yourself with the local culture. We were assigned to local families. And one of the ladies I was assigned to, her name was Raquel Welch. And I said, this got to be the actress. It wasn't. But then very fine lady. What the whole project was, after being knowledgeable about the valley or the culture, to visit the non-Armenian families, to assimilate and learn about it. So we were at dinner. We had 2 hours or so conversation. At the end, she says, you don't need me. I said, what? She says, you can do all right. Well, because I get involved in the church fairly quickly when I was here. My brother being deacon himself, archdeacon, he used to attend the church, so I automatically went there. The church itself, of course, has its own social circle. I was very active up to now, and then that's was part of the community. I did also participate in cultural events, poetry readings or choir singing. Those are all part of my upbringing. As I learned in Lebanon, member of a choir over there, Hamaskayan Choir, I did the same thing here. Once they heard that I recite poetry, every Sunday when there was an event, without letting me know, just after the church, you're going to say a poem. Luckily, I was fresh in my mind. I used to go and say that, yeah. Wow. So that became the transition from Lebanon to here, as far as the Armenian ethnicity or culture or heritage, I didn't see any change. I did not see any uh, challenge, except, of course, those who were born and raised in U.S. will have different kind of a approach to life compared to when we come to a new circle or new community.
Mm.
From that perspective, traditions were a little bit different. I remember the Thanksgiving Day, 79, and since then I have never missed Thanksgiving not being with family.
Aww.
So that was a beautiful tradition, I think, up to now I cherish.
Mm.
That was a beautiful tradition. Other things, as far as an older Armenian traditions, which is not practiced here, that's naturally, it's in your memory. Let's say the Vartavar, you know what that is. Vartavar is it happens in summer in July mainly, and people throw water on each other. It's part of the celebration of the Armenian church. In US, you be careful you're throwing water on, right? So over there, we didn't have a problem. So in Armenia, when I went there, you didn't have that problem, toss the whole bucket of water on you. But those are things that each community has. Uh, as far as the American culture, I did get involved quite a lot in the American life, quite a lot in American politics, volunteered quite a lot in the political elections. That was in '82. The city college, I was taking a history class, U.S. history, obviously. One of the assignment was either you're going to read a book and summarize it, or you have to volunteer 20 hours in a political campaign.
Oh.
Well, I used to do deliveries. My job was working daytime, delivering appliances and so forth. I said, maybe I can volunteer. The 20 hours went up being 40, 60, 100, and I fell in love with it.
Wow.
And I did a lot, and from '82 to almost 2000, I was very much active in local American politics, mainly volunteering. Yeah, '82 was when George Deukmejian was running for governor, and I was technically volunteer in charge of distributing pamphlets throughout different areas in Fresno.
What made you so interested in local politics?
Well, you realize that if you believe to improve your life, and if you like to be living in a better environment, politics has a lot to do. Economy, of course, has itself. In politics, if you won't complain, if you don't get active in politics and you have something to say, don't say it because you were not part of it. You can complain as much as you want, but if you're not actively involved in politics or policy making, you cannot make a big difference. When you participate in it, you have the right to express yourself more freely, more consciously, whatever you believe in, be that liberal or conservative. Um, I noticed that in US, participation in local politics or state or federal, number one, opens up a lot of doors. A lot of doors. Up to now, I have quite a lot of friends, being they Congress or not, who because you work from zero ground up, you help them be elected. Even though they're retired, they still call you with your first name. You call them with their first name. If there is something, you go to DC and so forth, they will help. It's part of being the community, part of being the society, part of growing with the society and advancing your own not I don't want to say agenda, but advance your life.
Yeah.
I encourage every single young man and woman to participate. Would they listen to me? I don't know.
That's great. And going off of that, I would love to talk about the humanitarian work you were doing in Armenia. How did you get started with that?
As I was studying master's program in international affairs, as you know, Armenia became independent, was declared independent, was acknowledged by U.S. as an independent country, and there was a huge, huge gap between centrally driven economy coming from Moscow or freelance democratic system, open society, open economic system that we have in the West. The group of people, mainly from Fresno and Bay Area and Davis, formed an organization called Armenian Technology Group, who was focused specifically on agriculture, how to improve Armenia's agriculture to make them less dependent on their neighbors. Mm. The organization started in '89 as volunteer, and myself being the student of international, I used to follow their board meetings, volunteer, and in my papers, my thesis or master program, I wrote on, not master, in one of the classes, I wrote on agricultural relationship between the countries. So that kind of unknowingly, I was preparing myself for something that's going to be my basically 35 years of life. And one day we were at the Armenian picnic. I met the chairman and the president. They had the posters with pictures and so forth, what they're done in Armenia in '89, '90, and so forth. And in the conversation, there was 92, said that, we're looking for a volunteer to go to Armenia. Would you be interested? I said, yeah. I used to be in sales at the time, and I took my vacation. So March of '93 was my second trip. First trip was '92, I'm sorry. On the way back, we had more conversation with the chairman. My Dr. Hazar Abedian was the chairman from Lafayette, and the president was Sarkis Rabian, and then Ron Khachikian was the other president. Those are the people, and Dr. Varoujan from Davis, and Nubar Tashian from Oakland, and more. And they became my best education in life, if I may say. Each professional in their approach. At the board meetings that you sit down, you see quality discussion, and at the end of the discussion, decisions made and you follow. They were looking for someone who speaks Armenian and knows Armenian language and culture, also the traditions, as well as English. And I think I became the right fit. Yeah. So '93, on the way back, coming back again, they asked me if I volunteer. I said yes. There were a large quantity of grain to be shipped from US to Armenia, and from Moscow also to Armenia, and they were looking for someone to distribute that. My undergrads being logistics, business logistics, in charge of distribution, so I can do that. And a master's in international affairs, it kind of danced together. So I ended up going there March of '94, March 4th, '94, for 3 weeks. I believe I did significant difference at my 3 weeks time. We were able to organize direct shipment of grain from, when I say grain, seed, specifically 170 tons of US seed from US to Armenia while I was in Armenia. I was able to arrange that with USAID, State Department, and our contact here in US. And from there on, when I came back, I went back to my work. I was in sales, electronic sales. And after a week or so, my chairman says, I need someone to help me at night. Can you help? I go, sure. Then I went back to my work. I says, I'm quitting. Without having any income, without having any expectations of what will come. I dropped my work and volunteered to work for Armenia and helping agriculture. And that lasted 30 plus years.
So 30 plus years you were living in Armenia, or were you going back and forth?
I was appointed as executive director of the Armenian Technology Group. That was first time when I visited there, I was representing the board to negotiate what we can do. That's a long story that will take hours. I don't want to bore you on that. The idea was, how can we make the farmer self-sufficient? The technology was, how can we increase the yield, the tonnage per hectare compared to what they used to harvest. Their regular harvest yield, I would say, between 1 and 2.5 or 3 tons per hectare, where the US variety was 5, 6, 7 tons per hectare. So it was a huge gap. What they were harvesting at what we here in the US were doing. Of course, there's a technology of preparing the ground, adjusting the combines, how to plant them, how to apply fertilizers, and so forth. So all those things through technical advisors that we had on the board, plus retired UC extension advisors. That's what I end up managing from 94 and on, sometimes working 10, 20, 15, 20, 25 hours
Wow.
nonstop. I remember going to bed at 4 in the morning, getting up at 6 in the morning because it was a different hour over there. We had about 173 employees in Armenia, all managed from my bedroom
Oh my goodness.
until I moved on to office.
Wow.
And I used to go travel to Armenia often because my role was between USAID, between USDA and Armenian farmer or Armenian government. We used to receive grants from the US government, receive a large amount of commodities, monetize them, and use the proceeds to help advance agriculture in Armenia. We expanded our operation with CIMIT, that's International Wheat and Maize Improvement Organization, based in Mexico. We had, of course, Armenian farmers or agronomists come here. We went there for training, and we still receive 30, 40 samples of seed, small ounces, that we plant on the ground in Armenia in 30 different locations to see which variety provides highest yield at the given conditions. It was more applied science methodology. Whatever is tested on lab, you take that and apply on the ground on an open nature. And then winter, cold, rain, summer, heat, doesn't matter. You have to see how that seed does in a certain location. In Armenia, having 7 different growing zones, you have to test all of them.
Wow.
So what we did, what we still do, what governments normally do. So we took that role of underwriting or doing the science work. Um, we received a lot of funding from US government, the private sector, and worked throughout Armenia and Artsakh until Artsakh, of course, was taken over. But to give you an example, as a result of 30 plus years, what we started with, let's say, 2 metric ton harvest, now we can harvest 8 to 10 metric ton per harvest. Those are the seeds. They're not hybrid, they're domesticated seed. We test it over and over again in different conditions. Once we make sure that this seed will do well, then we provide to the farmers, because we do not have the right to cheat the farmer. A lot of times when they import seed from out of Armenia, without testing, they pass around to the growers.
Mm.
And the poor farmer thinks that this is high quality. In reality, end up being animal feed quality. The only chance they have to grow grain to feed their family is taken away. It's basically robbing their whole 9 months of life. So we couldn't afford that. So we had to absorb all the cost ourselves prior to passing any seed to them. We had to test it. I would say last year we have tested about 480 seed varieties, out of which we have 6. The rest of them tossed away. You use them 3, 4, 5 years, then we got a better seed quality. You throw the other one again, then you improve that, you increase the quantity and pass it on.
Sounds like a lot of your work there was very business oriented, logistics oriented.
It was, yes.
I was curious if you, though, had any special memories of your time visiting Armenia.
Quite a lot.
Quite a few, yeah.
Let me give you one example. I think that speaks to quite a lot of us. I tried not to spend too much time in the Yerevan, mainly in the countryside, because our contacts were people, the farmers themselves. We were working with the farmers directly. Of course, we will inform the village people, the government, what we are to do. And upon my return before the day before, I said, this is what we did. I'm here to do ABC. I did ABC. I'm going back. Thank you. So no handouts to government, directly with the growers. One day, I have this farmer at the ministry. I'm sitting there talking with him. The guy knocks the door, walking in there, angry. And angry to to the minister because he's looking for animal feed for his cattle. He doesn't have enough. The minister says, Varoujan, could you please help? So there are a lot of those examples. Anyway, one day this guy comes to our office. We have an office there. He says, I want you to come to my house. I said, I'm busy, I can't afford to visit the families. You're talking thousands of acres of farming. You're talking growers and so forth. So I'm waiting in this corner. We're talking in Tallinn. Tallinn is about 2.5 hours north of Yerevan. I'll be waiting in that corner. You're going to come to my house. Of course, we had the Ramas, three of us driving. I see them around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, his corner waiting. So we went to his house, very plain house, very simple house, 3 by 3 table. So sit down, ordering. You sit down, no table cover, just plain wood. He goes in the basement. He comes up, you know what lavash is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Folds out lavash, he puts on the table, says, eat. Says, eat. Why? He says, this is the bread that you gave me.
Oh, wow.
Because that's what we were doing.
Yeah.
When you look in 92, 93, 94, the country had no bread. They had to mix sawdust with flour to feed the people. And you see the lines, one after the other, waiting for that piece of bread. And the families, the parents will not eat that because they want the kids to eat it. And the kids will not eat it, so the parents eat it. So knowing that, the mission that we had with ATG, Armenian Technology Group, was we don't want to see that again. 80% of the grain comes from outside of Armenia. Ukraine, Belarus, Russia, Kazakhstan. Turkey, Azerbaijan blockade on you. They will not let crop come into a country. Mm-hmm. You're basically choking, starving the country to death. And that's why we focus on multiplying, increasing grain yield. A lot of people say, hey, the only thing you did in Armenia is grain. Yes, we could have done quite a lot of things. Yet, at the end of the day, when you see that child hungry, you have to give him a piece of bread. Armenians are bread eaters. So that's why we focus on the grain. Of course, with the grain, you do have to do other seeds, alfalfa, other seed to crop rotations, so you don't poison the ground. So there are other technologies, but those are things that you have to face. Sometimes they say the name technology, why don't you guys are involved in computer science? Yes, we could have done it, but at the end, again, now, once the country becomes, let's say, sufficient in the business environment, once the economic or political environment, geopolitics becomes not favorable, will never be favorable to Armenia, but at least balanced, where the country can import and export their, let's say, consumer needs, including the food, then probably our needs will be reduced. But as of now, I still see the need for it, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Very important. I want to turn a little bit to your work for the museum. Very big switch, but that's where we're sitting right now. Yes. Can you talk about how you got involved with the Armenian Museum?
Yes. It was in 2000 or so when people approached me, says, we need to have a museum in Fresno. I said, fine, please. Got 60,000 Armenians in Fresno, let someone else do it. He says, no, you have to do it because you have, I'm sorry to say, you have credibility, you're working, you have, my name was in a paper the other day. I'm sorry to say that. I was, community knew what I was doing in Armenia. There was respect for the whole board who initiated the work. And so they approached me to start a museum. And I was busy. As I said, I was day and night, I've been working. How can you manage 178 people from Fresno? Every single moment the phone rings, this person, that person, whatever. So I said, okay. In 2001, assemblyman at the time was a friend, as you mentioned, I was very involved in politics, and I had helped him. He was in assembly. He says, Varoujan, what do we need for our Armenian community? I said, Mike, they're asking for a museum. He says, why not? I said, all right. He says, write me something. So I ended up writing a mission statement, and I gave it to him. That was during the Gray Davis's time. And Mike submitted the proposal. With them, 2 other projects of his own. He was from Clovis, Fresno area, for his district. he requests each, as you know, as each assemblyman has a request. Doesn't matter where you are. Sometimes it does pass, sometimes it doesn't pass. So Mike took one of us. The other one was Core Clovis. The other one was baseball for kids and so forth. And that was right during the recession time and crisis in Sacramento for budget.
Mm.
We request for $500,000, half a million each, so $1.5 million. Tiny amount for, but significant for Fresno at the time. We're talking 25 years ago. But he calls me one day from Sacramento, says, Varoujan, there's no money. The governor is negotiating with them. There was a bill to pass on, and he, being a Republican, he was a tiebreaker. At the time, Republican and Democrats were almost even, and the vote was depending on Mike.
Mm.
If he voted one way or the other, the bill was going to pass. The bill had to do with the farmers, providing farm credit to those who replaced their old tractors or farm equipment with a new one. They will get tax credit. So Mike, being from Valley, having a lot of farmers as his constituents, he want to vote yes for it. But his party from LA, no, you're not going to vote because it's not your party who made the motion. If you do vote with it, you're not going to get our support. And Mike and I talked to Varoujan, this is my base. I have to go after not a party. So negotiations with the governor, instead of $1.5 million, governor was able to offer $600,000. So it's about $200,000 each. Two projects, other one for the Armenia. Mm. So in 2001, I received the $200,000, which was part of the budget. Mm-hmm. Everybody was surprised how we did it, and it was a line item budget, not just regular going to the arts and what was the name? Arts and Humanities, I think, department. Mm-hmm. Art and Entertainment, I'm sorry, that the state has it. So the money went there, and then 2022, Mike was going to run for Congress. So you see the connection, mm-hmm. right? So that's when we announced the money, and it was about 4 or 5 months later. Since he came to the ATG at the time, where ATG was the one who applied for the money, it was a completely different mission than Armenia. Wow. And a lot of people said, hey, give us that money. We know how to run the museum. There was no museum in Fresno. I said, we are responsible. When you're receiving federal or state grants, you as a receiver are responsible how to spend it. I don't know you. I do not have your record to pass the funds to you. But because it was a different mission, ATG board formed a separate 501c3, the museum. We put the funds in a separate account, separate bank, completely separate bank. Well, ATG's and Wells Fargo, BFA was for the museum. So we don't make any human errors by mistake depositing one money one place or the other. That was in 2001. 2000, eventually, of course, we got involved in this Varoujan Festival in 2002, followed by forming the organization. 2003 became the year which we were basically registered as 501c3. But we started in 2001. It was a small office with the intent of building a large museum, 40,000 square foot, where we can promote, speak, or represent, or display Armenian art or literature. Following the years, we had the Arshil Gorky Festival. We had to work with local organizations, for example, Fresno Art Museum, because they had display places, and other organizations. That's where we had the festival, the Arshil Gorky, was for 2 months. Later on, we had several other programs. As we grow and try to find a location to build, we need to have activities, which we did quite a lot. The biggest one was in 2008, which we started in 2006, by the way, mm-hmm. organizing 100 activities, all associated with Williams Varoujan Centennial, statewide. Majority of them was in the valley here. That was not only Armenian Museum, but any organization was willing to participate. We invited them. Non-Armenians, literary groups, art groups, musicals. Again, 100 programs. I have the brochure here. I'll have to share it to you. That was in 2008. The first opening was downtown Fresno at the City Hall. was pictures of William Soren himself when he was visiting Yerevan, and I had basically able to receive that from the photographer while I was visiting there. We displayed that, and from there on, all the other programs. It grew, and of course, 08, 09 recession came very, very hard. We had a very hard time. One of the big losses that Fresno had at the time was the Metropolitan Museum, which we had went bankrupt. Metropolitan Museum was going through extensive renovation. After the renovation, recession, economic difficulties, and however the board was formed at the time didn't last, unfortunately, and went bankrupt. A lot of Armenians, well-to-do Armenians, were major sponsors of the Metropolitan Museum. And for us to start a museum in the middle of a recession, when a major metropolitan museum is collapsing, it was no, you can't go out there. They're going to say, who are you as a brand new on the block? You're going to start a brand new museum. So our choice was to take a step back and decide what and how to approach. In 2011, I was driving here, middle of recession, very hard time. Even ATG was not receiving public support because of the recession. I had the choice to make, either close or continue the dream. So I decided to completely renovate my garage and move my offices and to continue the dream. Then I said, garage, home, just 2 steps back and forth. That's too depressing. I need to move. I need to go out. So by coming to this building, I cycle, and there was a cycling meeting here. I came to attend the meeting to change my the mood from the depression and recession and the difficulty of maintaining both offices, both the museum and ATG. And I said, the lady says, where is the meeting? She goes, what meeting, sir? I said, the cycling meeting. She goes, it was yesterday. I say that because it tells you how my mind was so overloaded stuff. Then I found one room, the sign as the room you see. I came next day, the manager says, we have one room, we can provide it. I said, I'll take it. When you consider, 2 miles drive from home with something, at least you're out of the house. So I started it and said, what else you do? I said, we have the vision of building a museum. So we can sign an agreement with Simonian that everything you see on the walls when you walk, first and second floor, is under my jurisdiction. So I can display artwork, be that historical or fine arts and so forth. For us 15 years, this place grew from one room, which was about, 200 square foot, even less than that, to roughly about 5,000 plus square foot right now we occupy in this building.
Wow. What kind of art and pieces would you describe the museum carries?
Being volunteer, and I love art. My education is not in art, but I do love it. I grew up in art community, my uncles and so forth. So my passion was not to specifically focus on a specific genre of art, but make the art available to the community. Mm-hmm. Being university, you have a lot of traffic, especially before COVID. You got 200, 300, 400 people coming in and out. I couldn't just say I'm going to be modern art or classical art or photography. So I tried to mix as much as I can, to the best of my ability, to reach out to please almost anyone that comes in. You may not like art, abstract, fine. Next time there's not, next time there's photography or something else. So even now, I am more selective. It has to have a quality. If there's no quality, I will not take it. Doesn't matter the genre though. If it is a watercolor or oil on canvas or oil and linen, the one you're looking there is oil and linen, for example, the large one. Ones here are acrylic. These are oil and linen. They're French art, this style. So they are different. And the quality varies on that too. Some of them are based on history. Some of them are based on emotions. I remember one of them, we had the pomegranate exhibition. The artist, Rubik Kocharyan, he passed a few years ago. He loved pomegranates. And if you see his drawings, were fantastic. I mean, you look at them, you peel them up as if you are real, pick it up in them. So I said, let's do this pomegranate exhibition. So 30 pieces, oil and linen, entire larger exhibition hall was exhibited. Next thing we did with him was Armenian history. He was fond of Armenian history, and what he did, studied all traditions, pre-Christianity, Armenian, they from the beginning, 6th, 7th, or 9th century, from the time of Haik, Bel, and so forth. Whenever he read history, he envisioned that and came with a painting. So he had a series of Armenian art based on Armenian history, pre-Christians. We did that exhibition. Wow. It was unique. Mm-hmm. As of now, I think we are the only place that exhibited that. Right now, the collections in Washington, D.C. Then another exhibition was, again, he and his wife used to go around and look at different homes, items that you were junk and thrown away. They will collect and paint this fantastic art. It's style that how you can see that art series, for example, you can see how art is changing, how traditions are changing, how habits are changing, how items that used to be, let's say, passionate about it, you are now have no value, or how things are, let's say, being hung on the wall, now being tossed away. He used that, let's say, junk or garage items to create the art. That was, again, fantastic art by itself. Wow. So, I mean, now what I have on February, we had two brothers, Manikian brothers, coming from Armenia. They were supposed to have an exhibition in Beverly Hills. Because of the fires, they were stuck, couldn't nothing. A friend of mine from Carmel close, he says, Varoujan, could you help? I said, what do they need? I said, they're here with their art, 64 pieces, and they have nowhere to show. So immediately, we took off everything we had in about, 3 days' time. This whole place was sprayed by their artwork. It was a lot of time, pressure. Luckily, they were here because this was the first time I'm seeing their art. So we did that, exhibited it for 3 months. Now it's down. As you see, now it's more collectors of different artists. So to me, art is a means of expression of feelings, emotions, history. I do that. So in the hallways, as you see, are more history. If I give you a summary, we have a series of 20th century Armenian history. The beginning of Armenia, U.S.-Armenia relationship dating back to 1919 and on, the era of the Near East Relief Services, how U.S. was involved in saving 130,000 orphans. Those are all on display here for people to see. Then you have Armenia-Russia relationship. That's called Eclipse, has to do the dark years of Soviet times when Armenia and Russia was relating, how Russians also persecuted Armenians, Stalin times, in details. That exhibition is upstairs, has something unique in there. I did it in cooperation with Simonian Museum in Armenia. They had that exhibition there in Armenian, a portion of it, I would say, relating to Simonian's life, how he and his family experienced Soviet Stalin era. After 3 weeks, that exhibition was forced to be closed. The curator or director of the museum was accused of any kind of adjectives you want to say, anti-Soviet, anti-Russia, anti-communist, pro-West, pro-liberalism, or anti-Soviet, or conservative, or even conservative Armenian party, nationalist, Tashnags, and so on, which was none of that. It bothered me. I wrote her, said, I don't know her. I said, do you mind sharing the information? She did the research. She didn't reply to me for a whole month. I wrote her 3 times. I guess she was trying to see why. Eventually, she replied, and I said, I'd like to share it here because there's information that we as an Armenian, no matter where we are, have been taught one way or another of one side of the other side of history. In Soviet Armenia, we were taught what the Soviets want us to hear. In the West, we were freer. we learned what we were taught from our friends, relatives, cousins, and teachers. There was a huge gap. To me, it's my mission too, is how we can close that gap. So she sent the information. I did my own research on top of that. So what we have, what she found in Armenia, and what I found here in diaspora, I combined them to exhibit that.
Wow.
In summary, we know that Russia or Turkish, under Turkish rule, we have lost over 2 million Armenians from 1870s to 1923. If I count the ethnic cleansing in our Artsakh for last years, we're talking 2+ million Armenians lost their territories and their lives. When you study the Soviet and Russian relationship with Armenia, some 1870s, 1890s to the end of Soviets, you come almost same number. 2 million Armenians lost their lives during Soviet-Russian relationship. So we, as an Armenians, we have neighbors which are not so friendly. We are neighbors who may act as our guardian, but at the end of the day, harming us. So that's what I would love to bring it. The division of the church, as you may know from your interviews, I did not grow in that era here in California, Fresno. I experienced that as a chairman of the church board here. My goal was to close that gap, and I did. When it was a centennial was being celebrated, I reached out the other side and brought him to be part of the celebration, because we are part of one church and one family, one faith. So when you see that, I'd love to have the people come and read on their own time all the panels. You got U.S.-Armenia relationship, Armenia-Russia relationship, the reasons why Armenians came to California, which we title Armenia from Shattered Past to Prosperity, was a part of the show in Sacramento. The Armenian diaspora, the DPs, displaced persons, we had the whole show on that. And then, of course, repatriation from US or from West to Armenia. Those are all part of our exhibitions here. Again, it summarizes 20th century history in this place. People ask you or me, says, how much time does it take? I said, depends how fast you walk. Between 5 minutes to 5 hours. It really takes that. And the teachers do come here. They learn, they read. And I do online training for non-Armenian teachers. And they come here, I do that voluntarily. I speak to the schools about Armenian experience, both in US and, of course, the reason we came here is mainly, as you know, is the persecutions and genocide. That's part of my mission, to educate non-Armenians and Armenians about the top subject matter. That's the mission of the museum. Education, outreach, and of course, exhibition art.
Yeah. I was wondering what hopes you have for the future of the museum.
I normally don't share my hopes, but I pursue them.
Okay. Oh, you make them happen. I definitely see that. This is an amazing work that you're doing.
Thank you. Because when you express hope and aspiration, yes, it does encourage people to follow you. But if it doesn't happen, the frustration I see in people's face, I experience that, is not the best that you like to see. If a frustration comes to me, or if I have a setback on certain direction, I learn how to stand up and continue. For the general public to go through that emotional feeling that it will happen, this will happen, doesn't happen, I don't see that healthy. That's why I learned to do quietly. Yes, I do have inspiration in summary, and I'd love to see this grow. One of the examples, after being in existence from 2001 to 2024, being all volunteer work, first time ever last year when City of Fresno started issuing grants, We applied, received grants, and that grant is now helping us to hire staff, to hire curators, to hire historian or archivist, which you need them to grow. When one person can do so much, 24 years, I think, for one person is a pretty good time. But I do see the opportunity right now for us to grow. Measure P, which is funded by City of Fresno, is administered by the Fresno Art Council. That was they're the one who gave us the grant. It was competitive grant writing, just as you know. About 130 organizations applied. We were one of them. We were one of 110 who received the grant. And each year, of course, is competitive bidding as well. And now we have to prepare to grow. Our next project is coming, which is called Husher. In Armenian means memories in English. That's our project that we are undertaking right now. There'll be several projects coming up from now to the end of the year, at least 7 of them, which are all lined up. It's going to go every 2 months. We're going to have a new exhibition. It's all coming from that grant. I am hopeful that the community will see the value. I view the museum as an extension of our diaspora family. We have so much time at our homes to learn of our history and then pass on to our new generation. What my hope is here, this is a venue for anyone to walk in with grandkids. Just walk in, spend 5 minutes or 10 minutes whenever you have a time, pick up a story and pass on to your grandkids. That's how you can pass the history, the tradition, and knowledge from one generation to another. At home, families are running to make needs. Some people are better, the other ones not. When they come home at the end of the day, it's tough to spend more time with the kids. So this is all ready-made, passed on to them.
That's really beautiful.
That's what I hope to see the future and the Fresno community to take this one and fly. As you probably heard, in Los Angeles, they're building a museum now, Glendale. That was our plan. It didn't work out 2008, 2009 because of the recession, because of setbacks. But we kept the dream going. And again, 16 years later, here is the city of Fresno acknowledged our hard work and then gave us the grant, which really gave us a boost now. We have 3 part-time workers that come in on their spare time to work. One comes after 5 o'clock to work till 8 to really keep up the projects going. And I'm very hopeful really to see this becoming an institution that Fresno deserves. We are the oldest community that was created in the United States, second maybe after Boston. I don't hear. So, well, 150 years of life. 1874, the first person being here. He ran away because it's too hot. So now here we are. I am very hopeful. I'm very hopeful. I'd love to see younger generation to come take charge. I'd love to train somebody to take the challenge and move forward. Because there is a future. If you put your mind into something, you can do that. We published 3 books in the meantime. One was with Fresno Art Museum. There was Arshil Gorky's memoir, part of the exhibition we did. Based on that, later on, Philadelphia Museum in their Philadelphia Art Museum had their huge exhibition, Arshil Gorky. Then came to Los Angeles, and then Taft Museum. The second book was William Saroyan Centennial book. It was the black and white picture of Saroyan that was taken in Armenia during 1976-78 trip that he took. We exhibited here throughout the centennial celebration, and then the photographer asked me to convert it to a book with the help with the Hazel Antarami and Hopkins that you met a few earlier. We published the book. It's available, and it's a unique coffee table book. It's really, truly a good representation of what Fresno had to offer, or did offer to community, to the world. The other book we published was in 2023. It's called The Dignity of Being American. That title comes from George Mardigian's letter to editor to the Reader's Digest. When he wrote the book, he wrote the actual letter, and I love that title, so we use that. That's based on the life of the DPs. the displaced persons who survived World War II, and they were encamped in Germany. In 1947-48, Mardikian being in Germany, he found them and he helped them move to the United States, following another 20-25,000 from Eastern Bloc countries. So that what we did, we dedicated a monument to the founders of Ancha, which is right behind the Holy Trinity Church now. You're welcome to visit anytime you want. It's a summary is there. And we worked hard on it. The committee was formed. We led that, and the monument is now visited almost every day. Everyday visitors right next to Sunday school building. The kids, they walk by and see it. The adults coming for church or wedding every single day or week, that is being seen by hundreds of people. That was opening was done in April of 24. Then we decided to publish a book. There were 14 families still in Fresno who were DPs. So we interviewed every one of them and had everyone write a short story of their families. Sophie Mechitari and myself were co-editors of the book. We did the editing and laying out the whole book because we didn't have the funds. So we did, and we published it, and it's now a 260-page book, over 300 black and white pictures and some colors, talking about the experience of those families during and after World War II coming to Fresno. So those are some of the accomplishments. It's, you can say it's more like anthology of family lives. Just we were proud to do that. The other book we had was in 2015 on a centennial commemoration of the genocide, called the Cry of the Tormented. It's an ebook published on our website. Those were the letters written in Armenian during 1914, 1918 by those who were walking to their death to the desert. They were writing to their relatives in Armenian, very simple, very peasant, very non-literary language. The language includes Armenian, Turkish, Arabic, Kurdish, because that's how they talked before the genocide. Those were written and published in 1918 as a book. We translated that to English and then simplified to make it more accessible to current generation. And now it's on an ebook, which eventually we'd like to publish it as a hard copy.
Wow.
So
what has working with all of these people's stories and also getting to look at all of the art of the museum meant for you?
It's part of your heritage. It's part of your history. It's part of your culture. It's part of yourself. When associating with every segment of those pages of our identity, if you put yourself in their position and present that to the public, you enrich your life, and thereby the younger generation to follow.